Oh, I hear. Hello, hello, hello. Good. Welcome, welcome. Mr. Shin, are the other classes on Zoom? Okay. Hello, hello. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, everyone, we'll give it a couple more minutes for the fever line to get through, okay? And then we'll start everybody's assembly. Nico, you literally just got back. Okay, Bert. Nico, social distancing. You're literally in the front row. Okay, everyone, you can start putting away your phones. Putting away your phones, taking out your ear pods. I don't know, everything's got an I in front of it now. Your iPods. Oh, no, that's not it. Ear pods. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. I know we've done 2 weeks of virtual. We really thank everyone for cooperating. I know that was not fun and that wasn't easy, right? I hope you missed us. We did miss you as well. But, you know, we got ahead of COVID and got ahead of any COVID issues, so we really appreciate everyone's cooperation, okay? And it's really good to have everyone back in school, so it's really nice to see everyone. We just want to make sure everyone, you know, we're all on the same page, okay? So mask wearing, cleaning, social distancing is really important, okay? So that we can stay in person and we can just continue to learn, you know, in the classrooms where everyone belongs, okay? So let's just make sure to be a conscious, you know, member of the school and conscientious about what you're doing and how it can impact everyone else, okay? So very happy to see everyone. I hope you guys had a great break. Some people traveled, some people had family, so I'm really hoping that we can kind of transition back to in-person and back to school. So the teachers understand that it is a transition, okay, and they're willing to support you, but it is your responsibility to come back and plug in, okay? So thank you, everyone. Today's speaker is going to focus on a wonderful day that we had yesterday, which was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, okay? And he's going to talk about Martin Luther King Jr., probably one of the best Americans that has ever lived, okay? So I hope yesterday you had a chance to maybe reflect on that even a little, do some community service, and kind of think about Dr. Martin Luther King's impact on our country, but also on the greater world, okay? So Dr. Lagerterry is going to come up and reflect on that. So let's welcome him up.
All right. Good morning, good morning. So Mrs. Kais said that she's really happy that you're back. So I'm going to say that I'm really happy that you're back. Seriously, it's such a pleasure to see everyone back face-to-face in school. And of course, I'm talking to the freshmen and the seniors here in front of me, but also to the sophomores and juniors who are in their classrooms tuning in virtually, and perhaps some parents. I don't know if we have any parents with us this morning or not. But I often say this, and I want to remind you of the importance of this, that transitions are always the most challenging. When you're in the status quo, let's say, it's easy to kind of perpetuate your routine. You get up at a certain time, you do X, Y, and Z, and then you go about your day, and then you finish, and you go to sleep and repeat, right? Rinse and repeat. But when things change, it gets a little bit challenging, and it gets a little bit kind of, well, we don't do it that way, you know, and we get a little bit thrown off our game. So right now, you know, if you roll it back, we transitioned from the first part of the year to the midterm exams. The last time we were together was during midterms in the third week of December. And then we had our break, and then we transitioned from the break, which was 2 weeks of relative freedom. We transitioned then to virtual learning, which was only going to be a few days and turned out to be 2 weeks. And now we're transitioning back to face-to-face. So it's different, and you know, you have to adjust, and you have to, you know, get yourself in the right frame of mind to make those changes. I know some of you love virtual classes, right? Some of you just love it because you can, you know, you feel somehow a little bit more free or a little bit more insulated. But some of you hate virtual classes and want to be face-to-face. I think, you know, both are good, and we can learn a lot from both methodologies, and we have. And fortunately, because of the virtual, we were able to continue to do school regardless of what was going on around us with COVID, and especially, you know, this peak season, this month is particularly a difficult month for infections and stuff like that. So we were able to continue our mission, and that's what we're trying to do. I mean, that's the mindset of the administration and the faculty, is we want to keep going. We want to keep educating you, keep giving you content, because you're in a growing period in your life, and you don't want to miss any chance for development. All right, so that's my introductory remarks this morning. Today I have the great pleasure of talking to you about Martin Luther King Jr. So yesterday we celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and you may ask, who was Martin Luther King Jr.? Yes, you have that question? Some of you might, because not everyone here is an American. Well, let's start with some simple things. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15th, 1929. He died on April 14th in 1968. He was an ordained Baptist minister. He graduated from Boston University with a PhD. He marched on Washington in 1963 and gave a very, very famous speech called "I Have a Dream." It's one of the most beautiful speeches I've ever heard. It's up there with Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation and the Gettysburg Address. He was instrumental in enacting what's called the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 addressed discrimination. And that law, which was signed into law, prohibits discrimination of any kind, whether it's race, sex, creed, you know, whatever. You cannot discriminate against anyone because of those things. This is significant because prior to that time, there were actual laws, believe it or not, in the South. They were called Jim Crow laws, and they were completely unfair and particularly toward Black Americans. And that was done away with by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But getting there was very, very hard work. And Dr. King was the one who led us to that place. He also received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. As I mentioned, he was a civil rights activist from 1955 to 1968. And he was tragically assassinated in 1968. And that was a great loss for our country. Here's just a few photos. I'm not doing a deep dive. I just want to say, so that you don't expect that we're going deeply into the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. I gave you a bullet point list of some of his great achievements. There are many, many more. He was truly a great American, and he spoke eloquently and was very central to the life of the country in the 60s, the late 50s and 60s. These photos show him at Washington Monument. Has anybody been to Washington Monument in D.C.? Yeah, so you could just picture that in your mind, the big mall there, and they had a stage, and there he was speaking to several 100,000 people, which was an incredible achievement itself, black and white together listening to the words of this man. I love this photo of him in front of the podium, and again, I'm not going into a deep dive, but listening to the I Have a Dream speech is worth your while, very much so, because it is profound, and it speaks to not just the American reality, but all people's reality of how we look at one another and how we deal with our life and the context of our life. And then there he is on a march. That's probably Selma, where he's from. He's from Selma, Alabama, and he was the pastor of the Selma Baptist Church. So whenever we study the great figures in history, it's important to understand how they think and what they believed, because how a person thinks and what they believe informs their action. So Martin Luther King once gave a sermon called What is Man? It's 2 pages, and it's easy to find by a simple Google search if you were to look it up. It's, again, another thing that's very, very much worth reading. In it, he outlined his view of human beings. And he started off by asking a very interesting question. Of course, the title of the speech, What is Man? By which he meant not man, male, but he meant human beings, all of us. What is human beings? What are human beings? And he answered his question by showing a list. And that list wasn't the list that you see on the screen. It was just a handwritten list. I found the slide there at Wikipedia. But anyway, it's the same content, and he said, he showed a list of the physical components that make up a physical body, by and large. And you're looking at 65% oxygen, 18% carbon, 10% hydrogen, 3% nitrogen, and a small, sprinkling of other elements. And what he also did was he calculated what those elements would cost if you were to buy, that much oxygen or that much carbon and so forth. And in his dollars, this speech was given in 1954, in those dollars, it came out to about 99 cents. So if you can imagine, our human self, our physical self, added up into its component parts and then monetized would be worth about $1. And in today's money, that's about $600. Kind of a very coarse and very hard fact to think about. But then he asked his audience, is this really what is a man? Is that really all that a man is? And he answered his question by quoting Genesis from the Bible. Some of you are Christians, some of you are not. But we're talking about how Martin Luther King thought and how he believed. And what he believed was that man was created in the image and likeness of God. This is Genesis 1:27. And because of that belief, it translates into how we treat one another. If you believe that man was created as a child of God, as a divine being for a greater purpose than just the physical world, then there's a different way that you look at them and there's a different way that you treat them. If you think that they are of such high quality, you'd be less likely to speak ill or denigrate them or hurt them. And this was his point, that when he looked at the human family, he saw children of God. And that informed his subsequent civil rights activity. I love this quote. This is everything I'm telling you this morning is right out of his What is a Man speech. And I love this quote from Hamlet Dr. King is quoting Hamlet saying, "What a piece of work is man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action, and how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals." So Shakespeare was talking about human beings and placing human beings in a very elevated position. Martin Luther King also said, "My friends, there is something in man that cannot be calculated." Okay, we did the calculation in terms of the mineral composition of the physical body. In materialistic terms, man is a being of spirit. "When I see how we fight vicious wars and destroy human life on bloody battlefields, I find myself saying, man is not made for that. When I see how we live our lives in selfishness and hate, again I say, man is not made for that. When I see how we often throw away the precious lives that God has given us in riotous living, again I find myself saying, man is not made for that." And he concluded these remarks by saying, "My friends, man is made for the stars, created for eternity, born for the everlasting. Man is a child of the Almighty God, born for his everlasting fellowship." So that's the most important point, I would say, when trying to understand a historical figure, is to try to get at their core belief and their core perspective. In this case, Martin Luther King Jr. believed in God. He believed that all men and women were created equal, that they were made in the image and likeness of God, and thus were to be treated with respect and admiration. As a minister, he was a man of great integrity, and he saw the injustices that were going on in his own community in Selma, Alabama, and throughout the South. Because as you know from your study of American history, there was a civil war in 1861 to 64, and this war was fought over the institution of slavery, and slavery was outlawed at that point. But the aftermath of the Civil War was not perfect. In fact, it was horrible in the South because there was still great prejudice and discrimination against black Americans. Remember, these people had been sold into slavery for several hundred years, and then, through a bloody war, they were liberated. So you don't transition, going back to what I said earlier about transitions in life. We're not talking about transitioning from vacation to school. We're talking about a fundamental transformation. People with no rights, people who were treated like animals, really, were now given the full position as citizens of the United States, and with it all of the supposed protections and support that was there. But that's not what happened. Of course, there's a lot that you can go into in that period of time post-Civil War, what's called the Antebellum South. And it's profound because there was a lot of very, very good things that initially happened. But then old ways crept back in, and instead of enslaving black Americans in the South, there were laws passed that discriminated against them, and that went on for many decades. And Martin Luther King was a person who saw that. He understood American history. He was very well educated. He understood the Constitution. He understood the preamble. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal. And he also looked at the gap that he was right in front of him. You couldn't go and vote if you were a black American. You couldn't vote in the South if you didn't take some kind of a citizenship test or you had certain kind of identification. So he recognized that injustice, and he addressed it. He spoke about it, and he demonstrated. He eventually went to India and met Mahatma Gandhi. Who knows who Mahatma Gandhi is? Okay, good, very good. Nonviolent leader of the nation of India that transitioned from a colonial-dominated country of many millions of people, a peaceful transition to self-government. And that was done through Mahatma Gandhi's way of nonviolence. Martin Luther King met Gandhi and was deeply impressed by his philosophy of nonviolent protest. And he applied that in the United States. And he put himself in the front, as I showed you in some of those photos before, marching on, to show the protest against various injustices that were being done. So he eventually paid a dear price for his social activism by losing his life. But at the heart of it, he believed that human beings should be treated a certain way. He understood the Constitution that protected those rights, and he stood up for those kinds of things and led others to do likewise. If people don't say anything, nothing will get done and no change will take place. But he spoke up. But he didn't speak up with a stick, and he didn't speak up with a gun, and he didn't speak up with a knife. He spoke up with his sincere belief as a minister, as a person who was informed and motivated by God to carry out his mission to bring to light these social ills. And, I encourage you to watch movies that depict this period of time, because we, in our lofty 2022 mindset, we don't understand what it was like in the 60s. I mean, I was born in 1957. I don't even remember the 60s because I was a little kid, right? But you're born into a certain time. You're born into a certain culture. And change is not an easy thing to happen. But Martin Luther King was able to enact that change. He was able to embody that change. He was able to promote that. So much so that he wound up, as we saw, speaking to hundreds of thousands of people, and his words live on today. So that's why we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That's the reason. He was a great man. He was a great American. He was a great son of God, and he led by example, showing the way forward through peaceful, nonviolent action. Sorry, I missed that slide, but here's my last one. I hope it goes. Yes. So as Mrs. Keiss mentioned in her remarks, one of the best ways of honoring Dr. King is through service. And we here at BIA, as you know, believe in the value of service. And I'm not just talking about the monthly service projects where you go out and you clean the zoo, or work at one of the Urban Impact or one of the social agencies in town. But serving people can be done in any form, in any way, in any time. You can serve your classmates when they come into the class. You can serve your family members at home. You can serve people that you meet randomly throughout your day. Even smiling at someone is a service. Being kind is a service. There's infinite ways. If your mindset is that you want to serve and love others, the field is wide open. There's an infinite variety of ways in which you can do that. Of course, we have an organized program of service in the school, and we encourage you always to take advantage of those monthly service projects. But service is not limited to that. It's a way of thinking and a way of life. And we strongly encourage you to practice that, because it does make the world a better place. And you also feel a lot better when you have a more loving and kind way of looking at one another. So once again, welcome back. It's just such a pleasure to see all of you again. And as I said, not just those who are in front of me here in the Spurgeon Hall, but also those who are in their classrooms, and perhaps some parents. We're looking forward to a really exciting quarter. We have global studies. Wait till you find out what it's about. You're going to really enjoy this year's theme. And we have the telethon and lots of really cool things coming up. So I encourage you to make the transition well. not get ahead of yourself, not get behind yourself, but just take it one day at a time. And believe me, by the middle of next week, we'll be back running on all cylinders. God bless you and have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lagerteria. So anyway, I hope these are really good words to reflect on. Okay, welcome back. Good luck, everyone. This is the last semester for you seniors. This is your last semester as high school students. Let that sink in, okay? So on that note, good luck. Okay, have a good week, everyone. We will see you around.